And I'm Suzy, and this is the Coaching Cast. We are the No Nonsense podcast, chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's ever-changing workplace.
We discuss different topics each episode, sharing our ideas, hints, and top tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses, and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way too, because taking yourself too seriously is just boring. We hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we are really excited to welcome back our first ever returning guest, People and Organisational Development Specialist Helen Franklin from Free to Lead Consulting. Helen joined us in our first season and we're really excited to welcome her back for our sixth. So today we're going to be continuing conversations with Helen all about hybrid working and Helen's recent research findings on this very specific topic. So stay with us and enjoy. So before we welcome Helen to join us in today's episode, Suzy, how has your last week been? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Well, I'd say it's been a week of highs, and then it probably concluded yesterday with, I'd say, a week of low, like as a low, but that sounds a bit more kind of like serious to what actually went down on the eve of Halloween, because it was Halloween yesterday.
Yes, it was. God, I feel like Halloween has been the most intense Halloween this year I've ever experienced.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like I've been part of the pumpkin stacking tribe myself. I've got a nice like pumpkin like fireplace display. I mean,
check you out.
I know, check me out.
Stacey Solomon.
Like Insta mum over here, I wish. The amount of pumpkins I've seen stacked outside people's houses getting more and more elaborate in their displays. I mean, I'm all over it. I'm up for it. Like, this is amazing. I just don't have the time to do it. That's all. Or actually the skill, I would say. Secondly,
I haven't carved a pumpkin since I was a kid. I literally can't remember the last time. I think they're the most revolting things ever. I can't stand the smell of a pumpkin. I can't stand the feel of it in your hands, the stringiness. No, I don't. Yeah, no. Halloween is not a thing for me. It's not a festival I enjoy. It's weird. Anyway, you continue. So the highs and lows. Come on then. Again, you keep us in suspense with your storytelling, Susan.
Always.
What happened on the eve of Halloween?
Well, we'll start with what happened yesterday because it's the most recent thing. So okay. I frighten easily. Okay.
So do I.
So I also have a very active imagination. I always have as a child. And actually my son has a very active imagination and I think he gets that from me.
It's a skill, it's a strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I use it for creative thinking these days. Yeah,
quite. Yeah.
And basically, I don't like watching scary things. Okay, like scary films, scary TV programs. As we know, I am a diehard Below Deck Real Housewives fan. Okay, that is because that reality does not scare me often. Okay. It is my opportunity to zone out. Well,
it depends. There's some interesting faces that pop up on the Real Housewives series across the globe, I might add. Some of those are quite horrifying.
Oh my God, next week I need to talk to you about BravoCon. Right, remind me, next week I have to talk to you about BravoCon. Like, BravoCon. I'll tell you about that next week.
Right, we'll save it for next week because, at some point Helen's supposed to be joining us on this podcast. So.
Exactly.
Okay, fine.
So I'm not really into like watching scary things. I don't like them, scary films, etc. But I was like, no, I'm going to have a growth mindset. I haven't watched anything scary for a while. So my husband was like, I'm going to watch a scary film. And I'd already been out trick or treating with my son. We were back, like he was in bed. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch something with you. So he was like, right, I'll find a film. So I was like, okay, fine. So we watched this film called Creep. Okay, it's on Netflix.
I don't like the sound of it already.
And it's like a docu-film.
Right.
Okay. And it's about this guy who has it, like he asks for people to go and like film him. And basically it all gets a bit weird and a bit scary and a bit like, yeah, like horrible. Anyway, I was like watching this, basically the majority of it with a cushion in front of my face. Okay. Because I'm really jumpy. And I was like, this is like me trying to be like, let's, do something, watch something I wouldn't normally watch. Anyway, I watched the film. I did watch the film, but there were moments in it where it did really scare me and I was a bit haunted by some of it. And I was like, oh God. Ah. Okay. So that was fine. So it's not a long film. I think it's about an hour and 20. Like it's not a particularly long film. So we concluded it. And then I was like, right, I'm going to go to bed. And my husband was like, yeah, so am I. So I went into the kitchen and then I was doing something. And then I came into the lounge. Now, our lounge, just to set the scene, has stairs that go into the lounge. So there's like two sides to it. So there's one side where the sofa's like up against it. And then there's another side to it, which you go through to get to like another bit of like my hallway, essentially. So the stairs are in my lounge. Are you following?
I think so.
Yeah. So I walked back from the kitchen into the lounge and the lights are off in the lounge, right? And I didn't think anything of it because my husband was like, well, I'm going up to like have a shower or whatever. And as I turned around to start to walk up the stairs, my husband jumps out at me in the dark from behind the other side of the stairs, right? Like, and we've just watched this scary film and I literally just screamed like this massive scream and then burst into tears.
Oh no, you burst into tears. That is a severe reaction. Oh God, yeah, but to be honest, your husband, Steve, that is not okay. If Dom did that to me, I'd be furious.
Funny because I was so scared about this film, right? And so like I literally didn't know what to do, so I like a blood curdling scream. Like I probably nearly woke up Arthur because he was obviously asleep.
I was gonna say
the dog was like, what the hell is going on? But then because I was so like full of emotion, I just burst into tears. But then I was laughing at the same, like I cannot believe you did that, but tears were just pouring out of my my eyes.
Oh my goodness.
Like, oh my God, like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't even know.
Well, I can't believe Steve did that to you. That is just cruel. That is so cruel. I would have absolutely gone ballistic at Dom if he did that to me. It's bad enough when he does make me jump. I mean, to be fair, he makes me jump by walking into the room unexpectedly. So with the lights on, broad daylight, it doesn't take a lot to make me jump. But I mean, I would actually have gone ballistic at him. Oh my God.
Oh my God. So don't get me wrong. I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, but I was just so taken back and so in shock. And so like, I can't make sense of this, that I was laughing, crying and like screaming at the same time. Like it was like a mixture of emotions.
A whole spectrum. Just right there. The whole spectrum.
But then I was like, I can't go to sleep now. So I had to put the Real Housewives on to try and like calm down.
I hate you. Just like,
yeah.
Set yourself back down.
Numb me back down to just like not feeling, thinking anything. Oh my God.
Aww.
So anyway, so that's how my Halloween concluded last night.
Oh,
so that was like a bit scary. But my high of my week, which I just wanted to share with, I've been nominated for an award.
Oh my God, yes, that is amazing.
Yeah, so I couldn't believe it. So I got an email. So I've been nominated for a Northern Power Woman Award, which
very exciting,
in
people.
The Northwest is quite a big deal, as in terms of a community, in terms of an kind of award. And I think I cried when I read that email as well. There's been a lot of crying going on this week. So yeah, I can't believe it. So I've been nominated for a Future List Award. So like one to watch type thing. So yeah,
very exciting. Yes, we're very proud of you, Suzy. Sophie.
I'll take Sophie.
Can't even get your name right. Brilliant. We've been talking on this podcast, friends for years. I called you Sophie. Well done, Soph. Really proud of you. No, I'm so chuffed for you. It's amazing. How exciting. So we still are none the wiser about who nominated you.
No, I don't know who nominated me.
I love the mystery of this. That's a true award nomination, that is. So it wasn't,
Yeah.
unless it was, when did this nomination come in? It wasn't Steve trying to apologise for scary.
No, this was before he jumped out and scared the life out of me. So I find out at the beginning of next year whether I've got on the shortlist, but I'm going to take a nomination. You know, there's a lot of CVs as well.
Take a nomination.
Who run their own businesses like we do, and it's flipping hard work. It's a hard old slog.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you get anything, any recognition, you've got to take it for sure.
100%. And I would actually argue that's true in any form of part of your life and wherever you work. Grab that recognition wherever it comes from.
No, that is right.
And be proud of it as well.
Yeah.
But no, that is super exciting. Can't wait for next year. I know you and I have already been planning the awards party. I'm getting very excited. I mean, I've been thinking about my outfit and everything.
Oh God, no pressure.
So yeah, no pressure. But no,
well, if I don't get on the shortlist, we'll have to recreate it.
We'll recreate it. Definitely. We're going to still have our own party. Who cares? It's the nomination that counts.
Absolutely.
That's like an award in itself.
So yeah, that's been my week. Highs and just concluded on that.
Wow,
slight.
Feels slightly dramatic for you.
Oh God, I feel like my heart's racing telling that story.
Oh God, yeah, no, nothing. I haven't had anything happening that's as exhilarating as that, to be honest. I mean, my best friend Siobhan probably summed up Halloween for me when it was being discussed yesterday on my friendship group chat. Because I think a lot of my friends are mums, and they've acknowledged that Halloween's just gone mental this year. So I don't really understand what that means for Christmas. Good God. But most of them have been embroiled in a week's long worth of Halloween activities with their children. And my friend Siobhan lives in Sydney at the moment, and she piped up and said, even people are asking me what I'm doing with my Halloween. But the fact is, she's like, you know, I'm 38. I don't have kids. I couldn't give a crap about Halloween. I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me too. Yeah, I'm right up there. As well as the fact that, as well as all of that, I hate being frightened. I hate all of that sort of stuff. As a kid, Halloween, I just found traumatizing. So, it's just not for me. No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. So yes, Halloween, I pretty much hid in our house here in Cape Town because it's a big thing here in South Africa as well. I pretty much hid in the house and refused to be visible in any way, so that no wandering child could knock on my door assuming that I might give them a treat. That chocolate is mine. That chocolate stays in the fridge for adults. It's an adult only treat. So I'm not sharing that with anyone. No way. No way. So let's have a look. Where are we on time wise? Should we wrap this up and get Helen involved?
Let's bring Helen in.
Exciting times. In today's episode, we are welcoming back a guest from our very first season of the Coaching Cast. We have Helen Franklin here with us, People and Organisational Development Specialist at Free to Lead Consulting. Helen has been instrumental over the last 22 years in positively shaping many organisational cultures, leading to industry-wide accolades, and is a key player in supporting leaders and managers to thrive in their roles and careers through her passion and dedication to providing pragmatic training and personable coaching. We are super excited that Helen agreed to come back onto the Coaching Cast for a second time today to discuss hybrid working in 2022 and some recent research that Helen has co-commissioned on this topic. Helen, welcome back.
Hi, Helen.
Hi there. Great to see you both again.
Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. It's so nice to have you back. I can't believe you joined us in the first season and now we're in our sixth. So
I know. I
was thinking it doesn't even feel like it was that long ago. So so it's so great to have you back. So when we talk about hybrid working as of in the here and now, so November 2022, what best describes many organisations' approaches to this way of working?
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think anyone listening to this will have their own experience of it and recognise that the organisations they're in or they're working with have been going through a bit of a journey. And I think that's true. But when you look at what's happening today, it's still not quite where I hope it might be, in that there are still a lot of organisations that are taking a top-down approach. So if you look at the Future Forum, who are a consortium set up by Slack, they are set up to help organisations to thrive in the new economy. And they do quarterly reports on their research. And the most recent one, just like a month ago, indicated that when executives were interviewed, 60% of them said that they are deciding workplace policy from the top without consultation to their employees. And interestingly, that same research shows that executives prefer to be in the office. So what's the likelihood that their approach to hybrid working is reflecting that there are kind of more likely to be suggestions that people will be in the office for a certain number of days a week, whether or not that suits the teams and the individuals. So actually, when you look at what's happening, it's probably still not the best approach. That in most cases, what's been shown is the best way to design hybrid working so that it works for everybody, stakeholders, customers, consumers, team, manager, etc., is for the teams to do it themselves, interestingly.
Wow, 60%. Is that right? In terms of the stat? Wow, that is a lot higher than I would have anticipated.
Yeah, me as well. I assumed that would be the case in many ways, because for a lot of executives, they worked in a hybrid way before COVID, because many of them were not based full-time at the office because of the demands of their role and the requirement to take on a various amount of tasks and responsibilities that either took them out of the work office, or maybe different to that, they already had the privilege of being able to work remotely. So I'm not massively surprised that there is a drive top down to come back into the office for those individuals, because really for them, they want it to return back to how it was working for them before, and that was normal. But what I wasn't anticipating necessarily was that so many of them were in that space of, okay, I'm making that decision, but I'm not doing it in an inclusive way, and that we're still in that space where it feels very dictatorial and not in that kind of collaborative, let's really look at this on the grounds of what everyone is looking for and is feeling and thinking after the last couple of years, because they've been so significant in how it's changed people's working arrangements.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? And so a colleague that I work with, Jerry McKenna, we were looking at this from the point of view of the organisations that we work with. And I think part of the issue actually is that people have been adapting to getting back into the workplace, and particularly thinking about what they need to do for the consumers, the customers, the stakeholders. Of course, that's important. But sometimes at the cost of thinking about what's right for the organisation. I'm really hoping that people listening to this are saying, well, that's not true in my organisation. I'm hoping the tide might be turning, but our experience hasn't necessarily been that that's the case. There's a concern around it, that people would like more support in understanding, well, how can we make this really work for as many people as possible? How can it be mutual so that it works for organisation, team and individual?
Because from the research that you've been collating and working through, has there been any sense of a theme as to what's driving that decision from the executives? I mean, I'm saying there's an assumption of, wanting to return back to what they felt was the norm before. But is there anything else that's coming through that suggests as to what's driving those decisions in that majority group?
There's a couple of things coming through. So one is the belief that people will be more productive if they are in co-located. And there's actually mixed results on that when you look at the research around it, because generally what's true is that if someone is productive, full stop, if they're productive in the office, they'll be productive at home. That's just the nature of the person. So if they're not productive in the office, they're not going to be productive at home generally. So it doesn't really make a lot of difference, because people if they have the right skill set and the right drive, they're going to manage to be productive. So that's perhaps not necessarily a good reason. In some cases, it may be true, depending on the type of work that people are doing. But that's the point. It depends. It really depends on understanding what is it your team is set up to do, and what is the best way to do that to deliver what's needed. And when you think about that, there's some work that's much better done at home or remotely, at least in focused way, and some that's done by collaborating and being with people together. So that's one of them. I'm wondering also if it's actually about trust. So there's been a lot of research about trust and what it takes to build trust. And I think even now, initially when we first had remote working and people were going into lockdown, that was a big issue, the concern of, well, if I can't see people, do I know that they're actually working? And of course, for people who've never worked at home before, they had to adjust and be self-directed and understand what that meant. But you would hope 2.5 years on that has moved on, and yet you still see quite a lot of articles around, well, are people trusted? Do we need to see them to make sure that work gets done? Which is interesting.
Yeah, and it feels like it
Yeah.
still feels like such an assumed belief around productivity, and if I can't see them, I don't know what they're doing. When you think about the fact that there isn't a lot of data, as you point out, that suggests that people are not productive at home. And actually, over the last couple of years, I've not seen anything in any data or insights or articles that have suggested that businesses have failed during the last couple of years because their teams were working at home. If anything, it's the complete opposite. I'm not suggesting that they excelled above and beyond either, but actually they maintained performance and results. And surely that's good enough. And not to mention, there's so many industries and organisations within industries where actually they are fully remote and have always been remote and are highly successful. So it definitely feels like an old assumption and belief that's not really grounded in a lot of fact. It's just that feeling, that sense, isn't it? And then that feels like it can come down to us as individuals and about how we perceive others and that whole trust piece.
Definitely.
So no, it's really interesting. So what do you need to do as a business, as an exec group, to design your approach to hybrid working?
So I think there are obviously some things to be thinking about in terms of the why. So always start with the why. I think it's Simon Sinek. Everyone's probably seen that video from Simon Sinek about start with why. But it's important to understand, why are we even looking at this? And as a result of that, thinking about perhaps some principles around hybrid working. What does it need to be able to enable us to do? And I think if at the exec level, they can think about the why. And for example, some organisations that Jerry and I work with are looking at, how does it link to our values? If we've got really strong organisational values or principles, that tells us about the culture we have. It tells us about our outward facing brand to customers and consumers, for example. And really our hybrid working should align with that and enable that as well. And that can sometimes help. So it starts there. Then there's really, it is about trust, actually, because research shows that if you do it team by team, you're going to get better outcomes, not only for the organisation, but for individuals. Then trust your teams to design the way that hybrid working will work for them. And yes, you can give them some guidance, give them some things to think about to make sure that's going to be effective. But it's really about having some really good conversations, thinking about what outcomes you need to meet for the organisation, for the team, for individuals, and then also melding that, or almost having a Venn diagram, or looking where the intersect is for individuals, so they have the best productivity because they know themselves, they know how they best work and can meet their well-being needs and their work-life balance needs. And there might be a bit of compromise on both sides, but generally there's a sweet spot, team by team, to do that.
That's really interesting. So you're suggesting you do that team by team. What potential challenges can there be in doing it in that way, when you're doing it team by team? Yeah,
you have to think about the interfaces. You have to think about, all teams roll up into bigger teams and so on. So it's a question of being very aware of the system that you're part of and thinking about, who are we dependent on and who is dependent on us. And so that, if you've got certain things that need to be done when people are together, you can't completely design what you want to do in isolation without thinking about other people that you're interacting with. But that's certainly the starting point. And then it's about thinking, perhaps rolling up through departments to take a look at it overall to see if there's any matches, mismatches, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Who would manage that process out of interest? Would that be like the leader of the team initiating that and then taking that and rolling that up to the next kind of team in the hierarchy, so to speak? I hate that word, hierarchy, but for the purpose of this conversation, we'll use it because I can't think of another one. So yeah, would that be the kind of leader of that team initiating and managing that process?
I think it varies by organisation, but ideally you'd want someone to take some responsibility, but then interact with other people to make sure it's going to come together. I mean, in some organisations, HR business partners are partnering with parts of the organisation to do this, and having that connectivity back into what is our overall policy around this. Of course, again, there might be a framework, there might be certain restrictions depending on the type of business you're in, that not everybody can work from home, or not everybody can have complete flexibility on their hours and so on. So all of those things have to be the framework within which you're trying to create a bit of freedom.
Yeah, because I think it's so important to have that interaction and that sharing, I suppose the transparency is the word I was looking for, between all of the teams, to ensure that actually it is being done in a very open, honest way. It is being collaborative, because as you point out, especially in larger organizations, all of the teams, it's so important that they're encouraged to not operate in silo for the most effective working environment and to get the most effective, efficiently achieved results. So actually that's so important, to ensure that actually everyone is making those connections, the links, and ensuring actually this does work together as an approach, as well as I'm sure fairness too, which is where I think that part around. And it's interesting if there are organisations that are very much getting their HR business partners involved in it, because I do think that's quite key, to really understand actually, is there a consistent policy we can create to help structure this, to help guide it, to ensure we have got that fairness element, which, I mean, it is challenging when you've got an organisation that has so many different parts to it and potentially different formats of working. You know, Suzy and I have worked in organisations that have got, you know, a big manufacturing section, you know, with a factory and things like that. Well, that's a very different environment and a different expectation than an office. So, you know, that interaction then becomes even more important, because you've just got to try and make it work for everybody, which isn't always possible, is it? I suppose, is that the question? Is this possible for everybody?
Well, I mean, no, like you say, for the manufacturing environment, you need to be there, don't you? But I think that's where that transparency is absolutely key, being really clear on what's possible and what's not possible, and being honest about that, and not trying to sugarcoat it. People respect much more when they're told straight how things are. And I think
totally.
Organisations aren't great at doing that sometimes.
Yeah, no, God, I definitely think that's my experience. I think, you know, actually everyone has the ability to understand the practicality of the situation if you allow them to, and keep it really open and honest and transparent, and try not to pretend otherwise or dumb it down too much. I think actually often it is just about sharing, this is what we're looking at and this is what we're hoping to do, and this is what we think can be achieved, and in some realms that's just not going to work. So on this point about how to actually make this possible around hybrid working in a way that is effective for everyone within that organisation, and to feel that inclusion, how do you need to be as a manager when approaching this to get it right in terms of your mindset, skills, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of key things really. So one is what I'd call a growth mindset. So, you know,
mine is Suzy's favourite.
Yeah, one of my heroines. You know, he talks about the power of yet, and I think that's really important, that we're thinking that things are not going to work straight away. And I think that's one of the most important principles in a way about hybrid working. It's not fixed. It's going to move, because your organisation moves, your team changes, people come, people go. You need to be thinking about, here's the way we're going to do this for now, and it may not work perfectly yet, but we will keep reviewing it, and we'll make sure we have the right kind of periods of reviewing it, and we'll be curious and we'll listen. So that growth mindset approach from a manager, working with their teams and encouraging them to say when things are working and when they're not. You know, not every day, but having a frequent kind of check-in and make sure that it's still doing the right things is important. So that's one of them. I think that the second one, if we're going to call it mindset, would be change, a change mindset. So this has been one of the biggest changes for workforces that we've ever had in the last couple of years. And people are, even now, some people are only just going back into offices. So for some people, it's been happening for a while. For some, it's actually now coming back into the offices again. And managers recognizing that for individuals, that's a big change. And they've got used to working in a certain way in a home environment. And now there's the commute, there's the noise. Suddenly everything feels so much more noisy in an office compared to when you're at home. There's the fact that you are going to get interrupted. You weren't used to perhaps being interrupted. And it's helping people understand that that's okay. It's normal to be adjusting, a bit like, you know, your children going back to school after the summer holiday. It's that feeling of, oh, this feels strange. So I think managers recognizing that, again, listening to their staff and helping them to recognize it's a transition again, and getting back into it again is important too. And then a final one, which I've touched on already, is just recognizing that you need to test and learn. So I think that ability to try something, change, improve, keep moving on is going to be a really important thing for managers to be thinking about as well. Those are the kind of key 3 things I would say.
Yeah, because I always think my experience with change in corporates is the ability for those who are leading it to have the nerve to just see how it goes. I've worked for organisations in the past where they had such big intention for the change that they'd implemented that if it didn't deliver it almost immediately, they were off changing it again. And I think with all of this, and I think it's true of any change, you have to get the balance right between letting it run its course and having the opportunity to deliver something different, hopefully something better. And obviously knowing at the same time when it really isn't working and it's time to do something different. And I do get that that's a bit of a fine line, but I often, my experience has been just people just not having the nerve, like being a bit, I suppose, too focused on that control element to just not let it see how it goes. And even the word hybrid for me suggests movement and change and flexibility and, you know, things coming together to try and work. So I think as the last couple of years has demonstrated, everybody's been capable of changing it this way, that way, doing different things, adapting. And I think we've done it pretty well, actually. So I do think that test and learn piece is really key. It's just the timing around it that's so important as well.
Great point. Yeah. Hold fast.
Hold fast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hold fast.
I think that's, a consequence of a lot of things in our society, in our life, and actually in some of our cultural norms. Like we move through things very fast. Like we work very fast. Like our lives are always like jam-packed full of lots of different things. Even like, I've got a young child, like even at school and like nurseries, like they move through things very fast, in my opinion. There's always lots of activities, there's lots of things on offer, which is brilliant. Like the intent behind it is good, but I think, that then kind of creates this frequency of kind of, you're always kind of going through things at quite a fast pace. And I think that can be translated into the working environment as well. I suppose I was just thinking when we were talking there, like there are so many benefits of hybrid working for so many people, but actually if you get it wrong, like Helen, what can be some of the impacts when you perhaps get your approach slightly wrong?
Yeah, there are quite a few actually, and there probably won't be any surprises for people who are probably seeing some of this. So recent research shows that in the UK, I think it's something like 61% of people are working in a hybrid way, but over 70% want to, so it's not going away, this idea of flexibility. So if you're not able to do that, if you're being told you have to come into the office 3 days a week, and these are the 3 days you're going to be in, by the way, whether or not it suits you with your caring needs or whatever else is going on, you potentially are going to walk. You're potentially going to go somewhere else where it has a much better approach to giving you what you need. And we're seeing a bit of that. So retention is pretty important around hybrid working. People are much clearer now about what they expect from their working environment. And again, I appreciate it has, it's a mutuality thing here, that the organisation needs to get what it needs and the individual as much as possible. But as we know, with the kind of the war for talent right now, people are moving where they think they can get what they need. So retention is a big piece of it. I think also thinking about the team itself and its performance, if you don't have an approach which is going to make sure that your team are connecting in the right way at the right times, you lose a sense of belonging. A connection is linked quite strongly to losing psychological safety. We know from research that psychological safety impacts some real outcomes around health and safety, people not speaking up when they need to, or in clinical environments, there's medical risks where people are afraid to speak up when they should do. So there are a whole host of different things that can be impacted by just not having people able to work in the best way, because you turn up at the office Let's imagine everyone's there on the same day, but there's not enough room to actually meet and do things as you want to. It's not organised. Or you can turn up whenever you like, and you turn up and there's nobody in, and you might as well be at home. You're just not able to do the work that you want to do. So it does have those knock-on effects.
And it's interesting around that psychological safety piece, because I think that's, as soon as people don't feel that their needs are being met, that they're not able to share them, that no one's interested in them, let alone they feel comfortable enough to even talk about them. I think that then has a knock-on effect on so many other areas in work, because actually people do no longer speak. You mentioned health and safety, and then I think, well, there's also the creativity piece. So actually people stop being creative and they stop sharing ideas, and it all just becomes so small and quite restricted and suffocated. So I think that whole piece around hybrid working is just highlighting like potentially some bigger issues when it's not working. And it still comes back to that, actually having conversations, inviting people to share what they're looking for, what's important to them. And I think what you're saying, Helen, is it's not about saying that there is a one size fits all for every organisation when it comes to hybrid working, and that every organisation should be offering that people are able to work from home whenever they like. That's not what we're saying. We're saying actually that hybrid working is a term that can be interpreted by every organisation for themselves as it best suits, so that they can still deliver what the business requires. Yeah, it's just about working with those in the organisation to be able to create that in a way that feels like it's taking into consideration what people are actually wanting, and then translating that into what's actually possible.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry to talk over you, Lisa. Yeah, what you're making me think about is, from a practical point of view, and this is often where managers think, well, how do I do it? It's not as hard as you might think. It's about having a series of conversations, and there's a really nice 4-box grid. We all like a 4-box grid.
We love a tool on the coaching cast.
Love a template.
Yeah.
There we go. This is from Holt Corporate Education, so I want to give them the kudos for this. But basically, it's about having on one axis you've got process, on the other axis you've got place. So when you're thinking about process, it's like, are we alone or are we together? Are we doing it singly or are we doing it in collaboration? When you think about place, it's, are we remote or are we on premise? And it's that simple. But what you do is then you think about, for the reason this team is together, what is it we're here to produce? What is it we're here to do? How do we know if we've been successful? Okay, looking at this 4-box grid, let's talk about each of the elements and think about, if you're in a big room together, get some Post-its and just put them up there. What is the work that we need to do in each of those quadrants? And how does that mean then we need to be in the office or not in the office? And it can be quite an interesting thing to do and have a conversation around. And it brings up differences, and where you can have a conversation around, well, that isn't going to work here, but maybe we could do it here. So you're actually bringing everything out into the open, having a conversation. Everybody feels much happier that they've been heard, and you've got an approach that you can take forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that being heard piece is just so important, because I know that's true for me. It's not necessarily that what I want to say, I want to see put into action. I just want the opportunity to be able to have said it.
Yeah.
And at least for it to have been considered, in some form, for sure. So we know there's been a couple of themes that have come out of your research focused back on that point around productivity, which we sort of started talking about, and also the importance of connection in hybrid working, which actually was a point that we did touch upon when you joined us in season 1, because we talked about how can you manage performance remotely back in that very early stages when we were in the 3rd lockdown in the UK during COVID, and we talked a bit about connection then. But from your research around those points, what have been your kind of top lines or takeaway points?
Yeah, so on the productivity one, and actually, to be fair, this is less about research, more about kind of lived experience with people doing this. There's a recognition that for those people that used to working in an office all the time, and I know it's not everybody, but for those that did, they did all of their work in the office environment, whether that was focused work, trying to find some quiet corner somewhere to do your spreadsheet, whatever it was, or go in a meeting room on your own, or a pod. Or it might have been having a meeting, collaborating with customers, or it might have been someone's birthday, we were all gathering around having a bit of cake. All of that happened in the office. Then we went to remote working, and people were having to do these things at home, and they changed the way that they were working. And so they got very used to having focused time where they could get all of their work done. And in some ways, we were in danger of missing out on the things that needed connection. That was harder for people. Now we're back in the office again, but in a hybrid way. Productivity is going to feel different from when we were in there all the time. So the point of this is, if you're thinking you're going to get your quiet work done in the office, that's probably not the right expectation. You can do that when you're at home. So it's not the right guide mark, if you like, or the right checkbox to say, I didn't get my own work done when I was in the office. That's not actually what productivity needs when you're in the office. What it needs is for you to be building the relationships. What it needs is for you to be with your team, kind of generating that sense of belonging, getting an understanding. It's about onboarding people into the culture when they're new. You know, it's giving them a real taste of what the organization's about. So it's thinking differently about what I'm going to get done when I'm in the office. It's going to be more about oiling the wheels for relationships, so that when you're back at home doing your concentrated work, you're more able to get that done more quickly with more trust and so on. So that's the productivity piece. From a connection point of view, there are a number of things that are really important. And I'm going to just go back to my crib sheet on this one, because I want to make sure I remember them all. So I think it's really important, because there's been some research that's shown that it influences employee experience and talent retention, first of all. If we don't feel connected, and of course, if we're actually not connecting with other people, we're losing that sense of belonging, we're not understanding quite so much why we're part of something important, we're less likely to want to stay there. But it also leads to reduced psychological safety, reduced physical well-being. We're not as able to be cognitively able for some reason, it impacts that, and social thriving as well. These are all research points. But what is interesting, it doesn't necessarily mean we need to be in the office more, because some research shows that hybrid workers are more connected than those that are fully in the office or fully at home, which I thought was really interesting. And maybe it's because they're being more deliberate about their connection, potentially. So if you don't mind me carrying on, I mean, one thing that
go for it.
Team members here. So if managers are role modeling the importance of connection, that helps. So if a line manager making sure that they are giving time to relationship building and team members are seeing that, that's one thing. But also encouraging team members to put time into it. So if you're having a one-to-one with your team member, it's not just about what results you're getting, it's did you build relationships this week? Did you spend time? You know, make it something that's important for people. I think it's also about making sure that you understand what people's connection needs are. And this is from research by BetterUp. They've got a whole study on this, which is really fascinating. And basically what they say is there are three kind of categories of needs around connection for people. One is to be friends. So that's the deepest. And about 39% of people that they surveyed wanted that level. So that's kind of quite high, actually. Then the next level, 50% of people just want to be friendly. So friendly, you know, we want to get on, but we don't have to know each other inside out. And then there are 11% of people that really prefer just to be strictly professional. So I think as a manager, it's thinking about that as well. You can't be all things to all people. It's recognizing what type of connection works. There's other things as well, but I'll stop there because I've given you quite a lot of information.
It's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about connection being at different levels before.
Yeah,
I think I'd focused it so heavily on my interpretation of that and what I look for. And I probably sit in that friends and friendly space, probably more so in the friends, actually, because when I trust someone, they immediately in my mind become a friend in lots of ways. That's how I link the two together. But I hadn't really thought about it in terms of different levels. But I think this still comes back to that real fundamental core point that we've made throughout this conversation, and which Suzy and I talk about all the time in a lot of our conversations when it comes to people, which is never assume that everyone is the same, and that you really do have to take the time to get to know everyone at an individual level and be curious about them as people, to then be able to know how to get the best out of them and do the best for them, because not every one approach is going to be suitable for everybody. And that can even come down to, as you're pointing out, Helen, that even connection piece and what people are wanting and looking for.
Yeah.
I do find that stat really interesting about the productivity piece when it comes to a combined approach of hybrid, not over fully at home and fully remote. And I probably would agree with you around, I think, is about the intent. I also think as well, is it about where you yourself are continually having to consciously adjust to each environment and and flex even in each environment to be, to deliver the best for yourself. It means, I think, that you're always having to be conscious, because your routine is never, not never, but there is going to be variations in your routine on a regular, ongoing basis, which keeps you quite engaged, I think, and alert. I know that's definitely true for me now, because I work in all sorts of different places and I really enjoy it. Actually, it does keep me very on, I'd say, but in an interested, engaged way.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And actually, you're touching on a key point here around the skill sets that individuals need to be able to work well in a hybrid way. So, the fact that you are adapting to different environments, there's a sense of an awareness, of the self-awareness about, where do I perform best? How do I feel today? Checking in with yourself, but also situational awareness has come up as being quite important. So I think when people are not in the office all the time, and this is true for managers or team members, you're not as aware of what's going on for people or what's going on around particular pieces of work. And there has to be more intentionality about being, having that kind of radar going about what's going on and what's happening for that person or this person, so that you're able to then kind of be act in an appropriate way, behave in an appropriate way. There's a number of other things that are really important for people when they're working in a hybrid way. So self-directedness is one, and we all know about that. If you're at home and you're having a day when you've got all sorts going on, you have to find the focus, you have to motivate yourself, and I'm sure lots of people have learned that over periods of lockdown and so on. But also self-advocacy. So this is something that generally, we all do one-to-one coaching. It comes up quite a bit. People don't like to push themselves forward, but you're not as visible as you were if you're not in the office all the time. So it's okay to state what your needs are. It's okay to say, I'm interested in that promotion, can I talk about it? And not assume that people are just going to realize that because they don't see you all the time. And unfortunately, sometimes out of sight, out of mind. So you have to be aware of that.
Gosh, we have talked about that.
We did a whole episode, I think last season the season before, on proximity bias, and I think that definitely came into play in my experience of hybrid working pre-pandemic. Actually, like, that's definitely something to be aware of. I think just going back to something you said there as well about that kind of self-discipline and the hybrid working side of things, like even just taking it. So, for example, I work from home 100% of the time. I don't have an office space. And unfortunately, there's not really many co-working facilities around where I am either, and I work for myself. And I know a lot of our CBBs do as well. But even just things like, I find, so I have an office, which I'm in now, where I do the bulk of my, what I would call my operational work. So running my business, doing my emails, doing my accounting, planning for sessions, etc. But when I'm delivering working with clients, especially if that's on Zoom, I cannot do it in this space. I actually go into my kitchen and I do my delivery in a different space in my house. I have the luxury to be able to do that, and appreciate not everybody has rooms that they can kind of navigate within. But there's something about that switch in location for me, even taking that hybrid working to literally that kind of minuscule level there in that example, that switch in location that does something to my mindset that makes me more productive, because that space is what I associate with providing a good quality experience for my customers and clients. And I don't do that in this space, because this space I'm in now in my office is all about how I run my business, my operational day-to-day stuff and my planning. And it's weird, isn't it, how when you were just talking now, I was thinking, well, I just do that on a mini scale in my own house, but it has quite powerful kind of impacts and consequences for me as a person, definitely.
You're making such a great point, and I've had the same experience this week, because my dog had an operation about 10 days ago, and I haven't felt that I could leave her very much, and she can't do stairs. So I had to work from my kitchen breakfast bar, and it felt so strange, honestly felt really strange, and it was affecting my mindset quite a lot. And it made me think about the research around this, that you have to, that this is why the self-awareness is so important when you are working in a hybrid way. You know yourself best.
Yeah.
And it's really worth checking in on that. And as you said earlier, Suzy, you know, the fast pace of life, we're always doing and getting on with stuff. Well, actually, we need that pause just to check in and think, is this working well for me? What's going on for me today? You know, how can I best set myself up to be able to do this in a good way? So
yeah, absolutely. And even like, I mean, I can imagine you can take it to environment as well. Like, as an example, the days where it's really grey and rainy, which it quite often is here in the Northwest, I'll be honest, most days. There's something for me about, I you know, as a lot of people, I can find that quite depressing, quite dull, quite negative on my mindset. And I've got into a habit of lighting a candle when there's days like that, because for me, there's scent does something for me, like that really kind of motivates me. It helps me move my mindset into a more positive space. And again, like, you know, it's about what works in your own kind of immediate environment that you can control as well, that will help you be the best that you can be, and bringing that to work. I'm not suggesting you start lighting candles in your office, to be clear, but, you know, whatever it is that works best for you, just thinking a bit, again, but creatively, a bit out of, you know, out of the box there, bullshit bingo I've just used, around, you know, helping you be the best that you can be. We'll swiftly move on.
Thinking outside of the box. I love the fact you caught yourself on that one. Brilliant.
Now I'm thinking, what have I used today?
No, Helen, you've been very good, actually, Helen. I haven't heard a single one. I've seen one. Brilliant. So yeah, well, so to bring this really interesting conversation to a close, I'm sure you're familiar with our format now, Helen. We do tend to collate our top tips, normally in a top 3 format, around the topic we've been discussing, to help our listeners, our CBBs, to take forward some of the ideas from this and put it into action for themselves. So what would be your top 3 tips for anyone who is really trying to navigate this hybrid working and instill a hybrid working arrangement successfully?
Yeah, and gosh, that's hard to get it down to 3, but I'll do my best. I think if you're
you can have 4. If I can push you to, you can have 4.
I mean, if you're a manager, the first thing is don't be afraid to tackle it. You know, I think there's a concern that, oh, how am I going to meet all of my team's needs and still get the work done? And is it going to create work for me? Well, these assumptions are not necessarily the case. So I think it's have the confidence to have the conversation with your team and to talk about it. And I guess another tip would be, you've already got data that you can work from. So you've been doing something for a while, even if you haven't formalized it. So why not just go back and think, well, what's worked for us in the last 6 months? What hasn't worked so well for us? A really simple type of review with your team. And for individuals themselves, and what's worked for me personally, what hasn't worked for me. And then that can give you quite a lot of data in itself. So I think that's useful. If you're an individual in a team and you're working in a hybrid way, I think it's about just recognizing that there are some things that you can do to make it work better for you. And part of that is the importance of self-advocacy. So I think it is worth speaking up, even if you do have a way that's defined with your team. If it's not working for you, have a conversation with your manager. Be realistic that things may not be able to change exactly as you want, but I think it's important to know what ideally would work for you. Thinking about the work, thinking about how can I be at my best, how can I be most productive. A manager once said to me, you have the right to ask for what you need to be successful, because the organisation wants you to succeed. So if you think working in a slightly different way is going to help that, then why not ask? I think finally, I probably used this in the last one, but I think the key word for everybody is curiosity. So I think it's really important to not just stand still, taking on your point, Lisa, that let's not change all the time, but let's make sure that we're being curious about why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we doing what we are doing? What will it take to meet the most needs in a mutual way? And then how do we need to be, either manager or individuals, to make that happen well?
That's great. Thank you so much, Helen. I really appreciate that. They're such great tips and really practical. So we will be sharing those at the end of the episode. But before I let you leave, we do need to give you the opportunity to talk about your webinar that you have coming up, which I would love for us to share with our listeners, for anyone who wants to hear more from you, just in general, obviously, but also about this really interesting topic, which I think is so relevant to so many of us. So please do share some information with us about the webinar.
Thank you. That's great. Well, hopefully by the time this podcast is being launched, people will have seen it on LinkedIn. But so Jerry McKenna and I are running a half-hour, 40-minute free webinar on 17th of November at 1 p.m. UK time. And it's going to be about making hybrid work. So we'll cover a lot of the things that we've talked about today, but with some visual aids and some kind of practical tips as well about what people can do. And there'll be a chance for questions as well.
Oh, brilliant. So for anyone who's interested in learning more on this subject and hear from both yourself and Jerry, how can they register for your webinar event?
Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn, Helen Franklin, and you will see posts. There'll be plenty of posts leading up to it with the link that you can just click on the link and you'll be able to sign up. So that'll be
brilliant.
Great.
That's
Amazing.
Great. Fantastic. So webinar 17th of November, people, go to Helen Franklin's LinkedIn page, connect with Helen and look out for details to be able to register for that. Completely free. So sounds fantastic. So thank you so much again, Helen, for joining us. It's been lovely to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back and joining us for a second conversation. I hope there will be a third one at some point as well.
Yeah. Season 12 or something.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Thanks again, Helen.
Thank you so much, Helen.
We are coming to the end of today's episode, where we have welcomed back People and Organisational Development Specialist Helen Franklin to the Coaching Cast to talk to us about the evolution of hybrid working. Our tips and recommendations from today's discussion with Helen, given to us by Helen herself, are as follows. We've got some great ones for you. Number one, be curious. So Helen, Suzy and I, we share the love for this word, be curious. So this is in respect of really asking the question, why do we want hybrid working, or why do we want to maintain hybrid working? What will it give us, and how are we going to make that happen? And Helen's advice was to remain curious throughout this ongoing process, because it is never fixed and it's always changing and evolving, as we've all experienced over the last couple of years. So remain in that curious mindset. Number two is have a conversation. Be open, be inclusive. This is specifically in relation to you if you manage teams. So get your team involved and really explore what's working, what's not, to gather those ideas and to get everyone's perspective so people feel listened and heard, and that you can actually get all of those ideas to make this even better for all of you. Helen mentioned that actually for many of us, we've been working in this way in some form for a number of years. So actually we've got data at our disposal. So use that to review before you make any new decisions about how you want to move this forward. What's been working really well? What hasn't been working for you? What can you learn from that to help shape what happens next? And again, stay in that test and learn space so that you just keep being open to what could be different, what could be better. And then finally, and I love this one from Helen, you have the right to ask for what you need to be successful. So don't be afraid to ask for what you're wanting. Ask the questions to explore what's in the realm of the possible and really take ownership. Put yourself in control of your performance and success. So we have developed some self-coaching questions to really help support you with implementing some of the learnings from this episode. And they are, number one, how is your way of working serving you and potentially your team as well, if you do manage others? Number two, what could be better? Number three, how can you make this happen? And finally, number four, whose support do you need to be able to do this? So really acknowledging that none of us really ever work truly in isolation or on our own, and the decisions we make can impact others. And equally, we may require their support as well. So don't worry if you can't remember these. All of our tips and recommendations will be on our Instagram page at the Coaching Cast this week.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode with Helen and have some new ideas to take away and try for yourself. If you have any questions, thoughts, or feedback, we love hearing from you. You can contact us in 3 ways. You can email us at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, on Instagram at thecoachingcast, and finally, you can contact us through our website, thecoachingcast.co.uk. And remember, we also need to hear your bullshit bingos, so please keep them coming.
Yes, please. So we know that there's no bullshit bingo in today's episode, but do not worry, there will be one back for you next week. But yes, please keep them coming so we can keep that going. Your support helps more than you know. So if you like what you've heard today and would like to help us to grow this podcast, please, 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 please do us a favour. Leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app. You have no idea how important these are. Hit subscribe wherever you listen and give us a follow on Instagram at The Coaching Cast. Don't forget, you can also watch these lovely mugs of ours and those of our guests by going to our YouTube channel where we share the video recording of all these episodes. You will also find them on our website, thecoachingcast.co.uk. Suzy and I both love music and we use it to motivate and energize us. So we like to finish each and every single one of these episodes of the Coaching Cast with our personal song recommendation, giving you positivity and energy as you launch into your next meeting. It's my choice this week and I have gone proper 90s, old school. I've gone with Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys.
Wow. I mean, you're always saying to me, like, you've gone old school 90s and you've done exactly the same today.
I have. So I've stepped away from pop music and obviously gone to the obvious because I'm so street. I've gone to
I'm
hip-hop.
proud of you. I'm proud of you. The 90s hold some great musical choices, in my opinion. So
well, everything's going back to 90s. The wardrobes, fashion is all about the 90s at the moment. I'm looking at potentially investing in a slip skirt. I don't know about you, but that's the way I'm going.
Well, again, we need to talk about this in next week's episode.
My wardrobe additions. Yeah, well, it's all about the capsule wardrobe these days, Suze. Well, that's what I'm saying on Instagram. That's what I'm keeping an eye out for. But yeah, so go get yourself some Beastie Boys, relive those moments. Intergalactic, love it. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. And remember, CBBS, you've got this.